Let me tell you a story about teaching while black. It was 1971 and two wars were raging, one against communism, one against poverty. And there were movements afoot. Our generation was marching for civil rights, women's rights, and against the war in Vietnam. We Coopers were intertwined in all of these conflicts. My husband was a veteran of the Korean War. I was 31 and crowned with my afro and adorned in my dashiki. While James Brown was singing it, you might hear me saying it. I'm black and I'm proud. I was an activist, a wife, a nurse, and a mother. So many roles, so little time.
At that time, I called myself a revolutionary flower child. Now I call myself an evolutionary flower child. I like truth wherever truth is, so I never truly fit into a box. You know, I'm a truth seeker. That's what I teach my students to be. And so I loved me some Martin Luther King. I love me some Malcolm X. I love me some Fred Hampton.
Somewhere we must come to see that social progress never rolls in on the wheels of inevitability. It comes through the tireless efforts and the persistent work of dedicated individuals, and without this hard work, time itself becomes an ally of the primitive forces of social stagnation. And so we must help time, and we must realize that the time is always right to do right.
You know, wherever I could get that truth and see people working for and fighting for the people, I was able to embrace it. And that's why when I was taking my Black Studies courses, I also took Native American Studies and Asian American Studies, etc., and Latino American Studies, because I wanted to be a connector. You know, I wanted people to be able to see themselves in one another. So what I say to my students on the first day of class is, I teach because I love you. And when you leave here, I only have one goal, and that is that you're able to see yourself in every human being that you meet.
We grew in the shadows of the Park Avenue Church, Lincoln Park, Tony's Corner Grocery Store, and Buster's Garage. The genius DNA nurtured by visions of hopeful transformation from small larvae to high-flying, colorful wings, afloat on zephyrs cosmic. The children of the maids, the janitors, the mechanics, the nurses, the teachers, the ones driven by mother wit and mandate for survival of the hearts, the souls, the minds, and spirits of eternally transforming beings. The village nurtured, chastised, because it had credentials. The foundation of solid values, money, and political support took care of all, and eye of color slight, non-acceptance notwithstanding. The 100% corner continuing production of genius, hallelujah. We continue the planting and the harvesting.
As a young child from the east side of Riverside, Southern California, which was known as the ghetto, I think for years, one of the reasons I thought I made it through was because my father was a macho man, but the real leader in the pack was my mother. And when I was very young, I had no idea what it looked like outside the ghetto. And it was my mother who began to venture past those social boundaries and take us to different places like art museums and galleries, and then to county parks, and then to the state parks. And little did I know at the time that opening that door for me would put me in a position so that someday I would be shaking hands with the President of the United States.
If I knew what I knew now, I would probably tell myself, you're crazy, right? There's no way you can be a new college student, a new mom, and a new wife all at once. But I guess it was, fortunate that I was a little naive and like, I can do this. When I graduated my high school as a valedictorian, so when I found out I was pregnant the spring of my senior year, I didn't tell anyone. I kept it hidden. I was naive and so I didn't tell people until after graduation. So I was literally 5 months pregnant when I gave my valedictory speech and walked across the stage with my son in tow, right? I mean, no, and very few people knew. Coming from a small rural school in Texas, I actually didn't know what Stanford was. I get into a class like Calculus 2, and I am just completely lost. And I think the other thing that was hard too is I didn't know how to ask for help at that time. I mean, I was the tutor in my high school. I was helping other students, and to get to the university and to find myself in a situation, I had no idea how to ask for help. And I frankly sometimes didn't have time to, because I was, like I said, I would go to class, I'd have to get home and then get back to my son. And so it felt really just isolating, because I wasn't with my peers. In high school, we were part of the GT program. We were all, kind of facing the same things. And then you get to university and it's like, well, now what? Who do I have to turn to? I was attending Stanford with my son, and I was married at the time, right? And so trying to find the balance between, sorry.
I was 18 years old in 1964, which is the year that they passed the Civil Rights Act.
Right.
And so companies were, quote unquote, forced to start hiring people of color. And there was an ad in the paper for long distance telephone operators. And I said, I think I'll apply for this. Now, of course, my friends are all Black, and they're like, you can't apply for that. They're not going to hire you. And I said, well, what the heck, I'll try. So I tried. I went in, they did, in fact, interview me. They had this exam we had to take, and I did very well on the exam, and so they hired me. And when you first start working at the phone company, you do the worst shifts, of course, the shifts that nobody else wants. And so I had 2 in the afternoon to 10 at night. And at the time, I was married to this extremely useless person. And
What'd you say?
I said extremely useless person I was married to. Okay. Very useless, had no clue. So he was 4 years older than I was, but at this point in my life, I had figured out that I had already outgrown him. But I hadn't actually done the leaving part. We had 2 kids at that point, and he would forget to pick me up from work. So I'm like 3 miles away. Of course, it's dark. And so I'm walking home one night. I'm in the darkest part of my walk. This elderly gentleman pulls up in his car, and he said, do you need a ride? And I said, no. And he said, well, can you tell me one thing? Can you tell me, what are you doing out this time of night walking by yourself? And I said, well, my husband didn't pick me up. And he said, so what kind of man would let his wife walk home this time of night by herself? And I hadn't thought about that. But I said to myself, yeah, what kind of man? And then that was my wake-up call to get out of that marriage.
My junior year is when it became evident to me that I needed more community. I needed familia, right? And I started, attending some of the sessions that El Centro would put on, started going and meeting new people. And I was like, oh my gosh, yes, this is familia. This is what I've been missing, my first 2 years. But it was hard because I wanted a difference. And then I realized this was really what I was missing. Well, to me, Hispanic Heritage Month is so important because we get to celebrate and honor all of those who we didn't read about in our history books, right? We get to, talk about, even if it's our familia, right? Our ancestors, our abuelos and bisabuelos, and, everyone who helped build who we are, helped, even build America, who we are today. But it's also important to do so in community. I think that's one of the things I have learned most importantly from my culture, is that we don't do things alone. This isn't a, pick yourself up by your bootstrap type of culture. It's not. Everything we do is in the community, with the community, for the community. It's about familia. It's about, reaching out when you need help. It's about being there when others need you. And I think that's one of the most important lessons that I've learned. Lisa Cardosa, presidente de American River College. Estoy celebrando Hispanic Heritage Month.
One day I was sitting by the American River, taking a day off and just kind of enjoying the river, kind of hiding out. And there was this other person there, this woman who was younger than me, because I was at this time in my 40s, and this person was in their late 20s, and they were sitting at a table and studying. And I was like, what are you doing? My questions, this beautiful place by a river, and why don't you just enjoy the day? What are you doing? And she said, I'm studying for the GRE. The GRE, what's the GRE? And she talked about wanting to further her life by getting her master's degree, because she had already graduated from college. And I was taken aback, and I was like, oh my God. So at that moment, here's another person who has that opportunity that I don't have. And she looked at me, she said, yeah, all you have to do is, I'm just doing it because I want to make sure that I have a path for my future. And those words changed my life, because at that time I was sitting there and I had a good job. I had a great hobby. I was giving back to my community, but I didn't have a path for my future, I thought. And because I didn't even have a high school diploma. So I saw myself as another Black sitting in front of a liquor store in Oakland on a milk crate. And that was my future. I started moving. I signed up to take the test, a general education test, the GED test. That was the doorway. I did take the test. I got a great score. I never studied, not a moment for it. And then I walked through the door of Berkeley Community College, and these women looked at me and they said, come on in and just sit down. We want you to sign a couple of papers. And I don't know what happened. They were doing paperwork. They were talking amongst themselves. And the next thing I knew, I had a full schedule of classes. I was in a program for returning students. And that was my first year. And 6 years later, I walked across the stage and I got my hood for my master's degree. And that's why I'm here today.
There's so much racket, there must be something out of kilter. I think that twixt the Negroes of the South and the women at the North, all talking about rights, the white men will be in a fix pretty soon. But what's all this here talking about? What means this votes for women? Just this, the time has come when they may voice with free men concerns of land and home. Then snap the ancient tether enthralling us too long, and stoutly pull together to right a grievous wrong. Once more awakes the spirit of the just, and a worldwide flame is kindled from the dust. Women, for the right we know, for the duty that we owe, for all souls now here and coming, vote we must. Let us stand together, women, hard and fast. Let us vow to keep the faith until the last. By the trust the world has learned, by the falsehood it has spurned, we will vote and rise above the vanished past. Then, sisters of our nation, put forth your mightiest nerve. Remember with elation the glorious cause you serve. Enlist your best endeavor, whatever that may be. With votes for women ever, press on to victory. We, the the people, all the people, how, oh, how it sings. Sisters working for the light, brothers striving for the right. We the people, all the people, how, oh, how it rings.
So we must help time, and we must realize that the time is always right to do right.
May you know joy. The joy of a kept promise. The joy that comes with the freedom of truth. The joy of enthusiasm. The God within. The joy of making peace. The joy of bearing witness as spring returns to a devastated heart. The joy of knowing you have a home in the heart of a friend. The joy of completing the journey over your River Jordan. May you know joy. May it find you and stay with you. May joy's laughter heal you. May joy's passion shine in your eyes. May joy's music pass through your lips and keep you singing and dancing along the way. Joy by Naya Arbiter, 1993.